Good afternoon and welcome back to Wonderland Asylum. Something a little bit different today. As you can see, I've got the Bismarck behind me, and it's a bit of a spoiler that I'm actually doing this intro after I finished the work, but what I'm going to be doing is reviewing and building the stand for Battleship Bismarck, but I'm going to be adding the power mod from Partwork Upgrades. So what I'm going to do is show you where the bits are different from the stock stand and what it does when it's finished, basically. Essentially what it does is it means that you're not having to use batteries to power the stand, and it uses 4 C-cell batteries if you decide to use it battery powered. Now this is a mains adapter which allows you to plug it into the wall. So without further ado, let's go back to when I started. Okie dokie, so this is stage 136, or issue 136, depending on whether you're building the Bismarck through Agora Models or through Hachette Partworks. Either way, it's the first stage of the stand. Now, it's actually taped shut because of how much stuff was crammed into this wee box. Now, again, looking at all the bits and pieces we have here, which includes the anti-aircraft guns to fit onto the deck at a later point, but this is the first part of the stand. Now, as I say, I am making things slightly more complicated because I am using the Partwork Upgrades power mod, which plugs into the battery box. So instead of running this cable from the battery box, I'll just keep that tucked in, and I will run the cable from the power mod, and I'll show you all that in a second. Now these are the screws that you get. This is a cable extension for if one of the cables on the underside was too tight. Mine's actually okay, so I'm not going to bother pulling the decking apart to try and attach that. These are what they call your cushions for going on the bottom of the battery box itself. That is the tray, essentially, that the battery box sits on top of. And here we have the pieces that make up sort of the length of the stand. Now, these ones here, I believe it is. 2 seconds, and that's not. Okay, they're all different. Never mind. So, yeah, lots of pieces to start off with. And as I say, having showed you, that's all the stuff that comes with the kit. Now, if you were quite happy to run it off of, I think they're C-cell batteries, which, as you can see, they're massive batteries, and from what I've been told, they don't last very long. Now, Partwork Upgrades do a power mod, which allows you to plug it into the mains. Now, it does come with instructions for how to set it up. As you can see there, it plugs into the battery box. So, if I can see, yeah, holding the battery box like this, because that's where the cables come out and it's on the opposite side, this plugs in. I don't think it really matters actually where you plug it in, but it's designed so that it'll go in and it'll fit in like a C-cell battery, and then you have your cables here which come out the other side. Now you have an LED to indicate that the power's on. You have the connector for the main socket, and then you have the power lead itself, which essentially replaces this. So this will go all the way from one side of the model to the other. So this does make it slightly more difficult, and it does mean that at a certain point I'm going to have to drill 2 holes, either in the front here, one for the LED indicator and the other for the plug itself, or drill 1 hole here for the LED indicator and you know, can't really drill one on the back of this side, so it would need to be on the other side once we do the next issue for the other part. Now, what I'll do is I'll start building just now, and when it gets to a point where I have to make a decision on where to drill, we will do that at that point. So the first thing we're doing is sitting the base plate down like this, and we're taking 4 of these. They call them cushions, but they're essentially very rough cut little gel feet almost. As you can see there, the way it's been cut, it's actually cut the bottom of the last layer and the bottom of this layer off. So I'm not overly chuffed with that, but again, it doesn't really matter. It's the bottom of the stand. You're not going to see them very much, and they just, you can see they go in the little circles there. Now how well they'll stay on and how well they'll last the test of time, I don't know. They're basically just there to stop you marking your whatever surface you decide you're putting your model on. Mine's on top of a kind of bookcase style thing. Okay, so next what we're doing is turning this round, and where's that part? This piece here, which is kind of part of the catch, and it goes in with the arrow pointing inwards, and we're going to be screwing that in with the 2.3 by 6mm screws. Pick me which are the 2.3 by 6mm screws. Give me 2 seconds, I'll figure out what the screws are and I'll be bang a tick. Okay, so that's these screws. There are 12 of them, and they're the main screw that we're using at this stage. So again, screw that in nice and tight, because this is basically what holds the battery box in. Now, as I say, I'm not really using it as a battery box, I'm using it to hold the power mod. But again, this is all largely the same, even if your plan is to use the batteries, or even if you're just using this as a stand and you don't plan to actually operate the electrics, because I know a lot of people were kind of just saying, I'm not going to bother with that. Understandably, it's a very, very nice looking model, even if you don't plan to use the electrical side of it so much. Okay, so next what we're doing is getting this piece here, which you can see has a kind of catch on it, and with the catch facing outwards, and that slot, because there's a kind of lightning bolt shape on the other side, but with the slot facing upwards, that's just getting pushed in there until it clicks. Fantastic. Okay, so the next screws we need are PB 2x4mm screws, and apparently there are 3 of them, so I'm expecting them to be quite small. And essentially what we're doing with them is, if we get the battery tray, and then this piece here, we're just screwing them onto there. So I'll need to take the power mod out temporarily just to get in at the screw itself. So if you give me 2 seconds, I'll get those screws out and I'll be back in just a tick. Okay, so the screws we need for this stage are these very, very small. In fact, they are 2.6 by 4mm screws. So they're very small. And what we're essentially doing is taking this piece, which is the mounting plate for the battery box, setting it like this, and lining the battery box up like that, so the wire is sticking out this side. Now, not that that makes the slightest bit of difference, because as I say, I'm not using that wire, so it doesn't matter as much to me. And then what we're doing is screwing these in to the 2 screw holes there and there, which is why I had to take the power mod back out. Again, there we go, all screwed in nicely, and you can see the battery compartment is now nice and secure. So what it's telling me now is to fit the batteries into it, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to get my instructions for the power mod up, and it says step 1, insert the adapter as shown in figure A. So that is figure A, so it needs to go in to that side here, which is this bit here, because it will sit like that with the power mod there, and apparently the wires trail out the side. Okay, so here is, as I say again, the power mod, and it just inserts the way a standard battery would, designed to take up the same amount of space, etc. in the battery box, just like that. I'm going to need to roll it slightly. There we go. And these are the power cables. Now they're going to be a pest to work with because they're all braided cabling. Okay. Now it's telling you to get these cables ready and run them behind that tab there. Now obviously I can't do that with these because, well, they're big long braided cables. So they're just going to have to sit there. I've seen some people say they've cut theirs off. I don't think I'm going to do that. I'm going to see if it'll all fit together without me doing that, because, you know, it leaves the possibility that I could just take the power mod out at some point if I needed to, and just run it on batteries as is the stock plan, but we'll see how it goes. Okay, so the next thing we need, is getting rid of all the legs, is we need this piece here. And what we're doing is taking these wires. Now again, I think what I'm going to do is leave this one on this side, drill a hole here, and have the LED shown on this side, but I'll see how much space is left, because that is always going to be an issue. Now these wires have been made so that they're long enough that they'll go along here and out the other side, but I don't know if the LED cable is long enough, and if it is, I don't know if there's enough room on the other side for me to have the LED cable there. Again, this is all stuff that I'll need to wait and see, but for now I'm going to do it the way it says in the instructions. So leading these cables along here, it now tells you to get one of the 136.06 pieces, which I think, if I remember correctly, is one of the longer legs, and it's the legs with the long legs with the 2 screw holes in it, because basically you're not wanting to trap the cable in it. I think, are they the long ones as well? Let me see. Yes. So this is the one that you want. So 136.06 are the long ones with the 2 holes. The long ones with the 3 holes are 136.09, and the shorter ones that I've just flung one of them on the floor. Give me 2 seconds to find that. There we go. They are 137 and 138. Now I'm trying to see what the difference is between the 2 of them. .138 has the flat bit on the end and 137 doesn't. I'll put these onto one side. I'm just going to again have a look. It's so hard to tell by how small the picture is. Give me 2 seconds. I want to make sure I'm using the right part. So 136.06 are these ones with the flat piece at the end, and the 136.09s are these ones which don't have the flat piece at the end. Looking at it. 2 seconds. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they are the 13609s, the ones that look like this. It's quite difficult to tell because I'm using a small Chromebook to get my instructions off of. So we need one of these ones first, the 13606s. And what we're doing is taking the side with a plastic bit and we're running the 2 cables. Are we sure? That don't make sense to me. Give me 2 seconds. Yeah, they're numbered wrongly. I was wondering because it was telling you to run the cable through it, but there was no hole for the cable to go. So these will go in here, and I just need to hope there's enough space for both cables to run through together. Now there's sufficient slack. It tells you, yeah, there's sufficient slack for the cables to go through. Aye, there is. There isn't sufficient space. So it looks like we might need to have the hole for the plug on this side, which I'm not awfully keen on, but you know, there might be no choice because when I screw these together I don't want the wires getting pinched. Okay, just give me a moment while I'm trying to work this out. Right, okay. They do just about fit in there together. Okay. So if you put them along there like that, yeah, they fit. That's cool. The next thing it tells you to do is get one of the parts which has part 3 written on the end of it. Now let's see, is that this one? Nope. Yes, I think it is actually. It's the shorter ones. Yeah, okay. And what that's doing essentially is it's getting put over the top to pin these all together, just like that. Yep. And it's getting one of the 2.3 by 6mm screws put through the middle, just making sure the cables aren't trapped. Yeah, they're fine. They're a bit tighter than they would be in the original setup, but that was always going to be the case with running the adapter cable through the same one. Now you could run it through the other side, I suppose, but then it'll get in the road of all sorts of other things. So get that nicely screwed in. Perfect. Then the next thing we need is the other long cable like this. 2 seconds. How do they join together? Ah, right, okay, yeah. No, that's not right. Two seconds. I'm just going to check the instructions because a lot of this isn't making sense. 2 seconds. Okay, so the picture wasn't clear. What you're looking for is this piece here, which is the indented lip, and it'll sit in to the raised lip there. And what we're doing then is again routing these cables along the inside. And I think there might be just enough cable there for the what's the word? Power adapter to reach where it needs to go. Hopefully. If not, I'm going to have to take this all apart and do it again, which I wouldn't be very pleased about, I'll be honest, but hey ho. Is what it is. Trial and error. Right, okay. Now that's all sitting nice together, or as nice as it's going to. Pin it all in with this top piece like this, except that's all just slipped out. Give me 2 moments, because I think the hardest bit is going to be right, there we go, perfect. Getting these 2 bits to share the same hole at the end there is your problem. Pin this on the top. There we are. Get the screw. Put it down through there. Screw it all the way down, nice and tight. And then I think I get another one. Yep, another one and put it in there. Oh, 2 seconds and I'll screw that in too. Now at what point do I start going, oh god, I wish I'd just dealt with the batteries. But no, the problem is the batteries, they don't last very long, and when they start to go bad, what they will do is it'll mean that none of your stuff works. None of the electrical components will work once the batteries start to go bad, which is very unfortunate because they are very, very impressive components when they're working. Okie dokie, so I'll see what we're doing next. Just give me 2 seconds. Okay, so bit of a problem in that if I run this along here, there isn't enough length on it to then pull the battery box in and out as you need to do. So both the power plug and the LED are going to have to be on this side somewhere. Not an insurmountable issue, but a little bit annoying. Yeah, I would be lying if I said I wasn't slightly irritated by it. But it is what it is. It's one of those things. It's not ideal, but it's not a disaster either. Because what happens is essentially the battery box, as I say, I'm going to need to get rid of these cables. I think I'm going to need to cut them off because they're preventing the battery box from sliding in and out. So yeah, so what happens basically is the battery box will slide in here, so that all lines up. I think what I'm going to have to do is put the LED here, because that's going to be the front of the stand. So I'll put the LED like so there, for example. Or I could actually put it through the top, couldn't I? I could put it through the top so it matches the other side. I think that's what I'm going to do, is I'm going to drill through there and have the LED bit coming out the top, and then I'll drill through the side and have the, just as long as I can make sure the power cable's actually going to work like that. It's going to take a bit of trial and error, I think, to actually find a decent spot for this, which brings me on to another point. If you're going to modify your model in any way, modelling companies are under no obligation whatsoever to replace any parts that you damage while modifying, basically. So I'm going to talk about that while I'm screwing this pole in, because this will make things a bit more rigid for me to work on. But if you decide, as I have, that you want to modify your model, great, fantastic. But the modelling companies are under no obligation to replace or repair anything that you damage while you're doing so. So if, for example, I go and cut these cables off, and then I decide later on, you know what, I would like to have a stand where I can actually just use the batteries. I have two stands, one that I can use for batteries and one that I don't have to. They're under no obligation to replace anything. So if I put this all together and the power mod doesn't work, tough, essentially, if I've cut those wires off. So obviously I will test it before doing any such irreversible actions, but that's the warning that I do have to give. Now, that's not going in properly, so give me 2 minutes. 2 seconds. So yeah. Yeah. They're telling me to put things in the wrong way. So what you do is turn it round like that, and there are 2 lines which should line up with the post for the big long screws to go into. That was why I was wondering why it wasn't sitting at the right angle there. But the pictures, as I say, aren't very clear. That is the one disadvantage I've found to the Agora Models build over getting it through Hachette Partworks in the first place, is that with the Agora Models version, you're stuck with essentially a picture on a screen. Now, unless you have a big massive PC to sit and look at, which I unfortunately don't, then you're going to be staring at a small laptop screen, and that's not ideal. Okay, so I'm just checking what we're doing next. Yeah, okay, so it's getting to the point that I'm going to do the mounting points for the LED and for the plug itself. I'm going to put the plug on the side. As I say, I would have preferred to use the other side, because the way I've got the model sitting in my room, the plug socket is closest to what's going to be the other side of the stand, because I say this is the front, so this is going to be the left hand side, which will be closest to the bow. The way I'm sitting it. Not that you need to know any of this, but it's always worth thinking about, you know, where is my model going to sit in the room, stuff like that. But yeah, unfortunately it's just not going to work the way I hoped it would. So I think what I'll do is I'll put the LED through the top. Now obviously when I do that, this is going to be this way round, so I need to set this in the way it's going to be, and make sure that once everything's in, that the cables and everything will all kind of tuck up out the way. I hope they will. They may not. Let's just see how we're going to work that, because obviously this is going to be clipped into its slot on the bottom, like that. So with that being in like that, are these cables all going to fold round? Yeah, they are. They'll all fold round like that. That's fine. No problem at all. Okie dokie. it's going to be some jiggery pokery, but I think we knew that before we started. So I'm going to tuck these wires in there, just like that, just now till I make sure everything works. And as I said, this is the point of no return, essentially, because if this doesn't work, then Agora Models, as I said, are under no obligation to fix it for me. So what I'll do is I'm going to put this one through the top, and as I said already, put this one through the side, sort of at the back here. Now what I do have is, to make the pilot hole, I will use my little hand drill, just as I say, to make a small pilot hole, and then I'll make the full size hole with a proper power drill. This hand drill isn't best. Does the job, but it's not the best. The minute you put any pressure on it, it just releases grip on the drill bit and sends it straight down into the bottom of the holder. But it was free, so I can't complain. So I'm going to move this over here a little bit so I can put the pressure needed on. There we go. Now the reason for doing this is just so that when I use the power drill, the speed doesn't cause it to go skating all over the place and ruin things. And that's also why I'm drilling through from the underside. Okay, so that's the pilot hole for the LED. And now I just need to do the pilot hole for the power plug, which is to say, I think I'll put here. It's trying to make sure I do everything in areas that it isn't going to cause any interference with any other pieces. Right, so yeah, so about here will probably do. Okay. So as I say, I've already squared with the fact that if this goes badly, then I will have to buy new stages to get this fixed, but there we go. So fantastic, that's the two pilot holes drilled. Now I'm going to have to use my power drill to get them out full size, because that's the size of bit we need. That's the size of bit we need to make it the right size. Now that'll fit quite snugly into the hole, but I'm not going to be able to turn it with enough force to kind of make the hole big enough, not without shredding my hands. And obviously if you look at the size of my hand drill, it doesn't fit in the hole. So I'll be back in just 2 moments. I'm not going to make you sit and listen to me drilling holes. 2 seconds. Okay, so that's them all drilled out with my handy dandy power drill. So what we do essentially is, for the LED, this is the piece here. So we take the nut off. It's got a spring washer on the other side. Now what I did was I picked a drill bit that was the same size as the threads. So you can just see that's fed in there quite nicely. And what we do is take the wire, the LED on it, put the nut over, you can't see, but over the top of the LED, push the LED into its holder at the point it should be at, till it's stuck basically, and then screw just make sure it actually sticks out the other side, because you don't want it popping back out. Then tighten your nut up till it's fully tight. Now it would help if I could get a screwdriver or a spanner, sorry, in there, but there's no way that's happening, certainly not particularly easily. So you just need to tighten it up as best as you can with your fingers. What I might do is get my flat nose pliers in, because they're not going to damage anything while they're in there, but they'll give me slightly more torque to turn this. So once I've tightened that up, I'll bring you back. Okay, so that's the LED in and tightened, and now I just need to do the same with the mains plug. Similar idea, try and route the wires in a way that I'm not going to get everything all wrecked. Feed the threads through, then tighten the nut over the top. And again, it makes it slightly more difficult having the crush washer on the other side, but it's also what maintains the tension to keep it attached. So there we go. And that is essentially the power mod fitted. You have the LED indicator there to tell you that it's on, and you have the mains outlet just next to it. Fantabulous. So that bit's done, and that was, as I say, that's essentially the bit I was concerned about, because if you make a mistake with that and things don't work, then you know you're kind of Donald Duck, because as I say, the model company's under no obligation to replace any parts that you break by doing modifications. So they could essentially just tell you, nah, you did it, you broke it, you go away. Again, would Agora Models do that? I'm not 100% sure, but you know, it's not, is it worth taking the risk? I think it is, to get a better standard of model, but there we go. So again, what we're doing is taking the base plate with the number 1, then the second section, which should have a number 3 together like this. There's no screws at this point, but we will be using 3 of the screw of choice in just a moment once we piece this all together. Then this piece goes on the top and gets screwed in. It's the piece that's marked number 2. So screw it in there, just like that. Now this is just the same as the other side, but there's no wires going through this one. Now I could have tried to run the power wire along here, but it would have meant it was very, very awkward trying to pull the battery box in and out. Not that I'll need to pull the battery box in and out with any regularity, but just in case you ever do, it's better to try not to break wires when you're doing so. So line this all up, in with the screw, screw it all the way down, then the next one, this is the one that holds everything together, screw it all the way down. And there you go. There is the second leg for the stand, if you want to call it that. And then what we're doing is bringing this pre-assembled part back over, take the battery box out of the way, get another of the big long screws. You can see how long they are. There are only 3 of them provided at this stage, so yep. And again, slot this through the hole. The squaring on the end will keep it in place while you run that screw down all the way until it's tight. And that's what essentially keeps the legs in place. It looks pretty good, doesn't it? So now what we're doing is taking this column. Now there is the option, if I wanted to, I could cut this in half and lower the height of the stand, but in fairness, I don't think, having looked at it, it doesn't look too bad. I can always come back and amend it if I wish to, but for now, I'm not going to. Okay, so, yeah, again, it's the same kind of screws we're using for the next stage as well. Again, I'll get one of them ready, because now basically what we're doing is putting the peg, the base on. Now there are 4 holes, but only 3 of them are screw holes. I'll show you so you can see what I mean. On the bottom there, that one there is a peg hole. So essentially what will happen is you put the piece in like this. If I can see what I'm doing, that would be helpful. Yeah, there we go. Line the peg up with a hole. Or maybe not. Maybe the peg is too big for the hole. Fantastic. There's a peg in the column which should be positioned as shown. So yes, it should be positioned there. You can't, there we go. That's it now. Sitting just nicely. And now the challenge is keeping it in to get the first screw in. Now again, that would have been easier if I'd used the original cabling instead of having the LED and the mains power there, but, you know, the things we do to actually have the model working properly. And the reason I say that is because I've seen a lot of people had problems with the Spitfire where when the batteries are brand new, fine, no bother. But as the batteries start to drain, you get voltage irregularity, which means that some of the things won't work properly, you get bits mechanisms being laboured, and that's when you run into problems. So yeah, that's the 3 screws in, and that's what that looks like. And again, you've got the LED just there poking through. Okie dokie, so what are we doing next? Okie dokie. What we're doing next is fitting the base plate. Now this is where we're going to find out if it's all going to fall on its backside. Is when I have to pull this out and get all the cables to follow it, basically, because the base plate is the mount for all the cabling. So as long as I can get this to go in and stay in, we're all good. If not, it's going to take some messing about. And I'm not in the mood for messing about today. So if I bend the wires round here, train them round so they're not going to get in the way of any of the screw holes, because that's your big concern, is getting in the way of the screw holes. Yep, like that. That should do perfectly. Again, some of this is a bit of a pest, but it's my own doing. So put the base plate on, making sure all the screw holes line up, and get the first screw in. Now again, you're not wanting to try and screw them too tightly, because if you do, then you'll end up stripping the screw out. You don't want to do that. So I believe there are 6 of these that are going in. Seconds, just making sure I'm doing it correctly, because this is a bit you don't want to do wrong. Nope, seems to be correct. Just making sure I had enough screws. and all the jiggery pokery and all the messing about has meant that some of the plastic bits are a wee bit warped, which isn't ideal, but you know, it's also unavoidable. It's quite warm in the room here, and a lot of the parts have been sitting here for a couple of months now, particularly the bits that were waiting on the power mod before I could use them. There we go. Last one. And the middle one here. Okie dokie. Now, turn it around and push the battery box in. Well, that's going to be easier said than done, I fear, because there are now so many wires in the road that the battery box is full. Now, it would normally be full of batteries, but it's now full of wires. So I'm going to have to see if there's a way I can feed all of this in and still get the clipping mechanism to clip. And the answer is, at the moment, no. Now, let's see if it works this way. Ah, right, okay. I see what the problem is. Okay, I'm trying to put the wires at the wrong side. It'd be helpful if I did it like that instead. So if I now push this in and then move all these, feed all the wires into the gap underneath, because that's why the power mod doesn't take up much space. Oh, there we go. Fantastic. Yeah, it actually works. Superb. Very nice. Awesome. So as you can see, that there is what it looks like, and that is it with the power mod. So yeah, all good so far. We'll see how it looks when we put the other side and everything on, but yeah, I'm quite impressed with how that looks. So that's all for that stage. Now what I will also obviously do is do a small video to show how the power mod looks all powered up and working. So stay tuned for that. Thank you very much. Okay, so now we're back at stage 137 of Build Battleship Bismarck from Agora Models. Again, in this issue, what we're essentially doing is completing the stand, or nearly completing the stand. So again, this is the other side. That is the box, basically, for the other side. It houses the speaker, it houses the power switch, and again, there's another pillar that goes there, but this pillar actually contains the sensor that connects everything to the bottom. That speaker is a heavy unit, just to say. Again, there are some more bits and pieces there, and there of course is the other pillar. Now there are also some photo etched railings and ladders, etc., but we're not going to be attaching them just now. That happens in the next stage. Okie dokie. So the first thing I'm going to do is set all these parts to the side, and I'm going to put the sticky feet pads on here. Now, it doesn't matter on this side, on this particular one, it doesn't matter which side is which. On the other side there was a front and back. On this one there isn't. And again, these wee pads are basically meant so you don't scratch whatever surface you've got the Bismarck sitting on if you have to move the stand around. Okie dokie. So now they're on, and set that aside for just now. So the screws are here, but they also sent us replacement screws with the last issue, because apparently these screws aren't right, or some of these screws aren't right. or something along those lines. Now I'm not entirely sure which ones are wrong and which ones are right, so I'm going to have a look at the instructions and see if I can identify which screws are which and which ones we're using for what. So I shall be back in 2 moments. Okay, so the first thing we need is this piece here, which is the other foot, basically. And if we set it down like that, we then take the big heavy speaker and we're sitting it down into the alcove it sits in. Just see if there's any notches. There aren't, but there are raised bits to keep it from vibrating. And they want the wires to trail back here. Now if I remember correctly, it plugs into this side, so I may turn it just slightly to make it slightly easier to move the cable, because I don't think any of the actual speaker itself is directional. And then what we're doing is we're taking the cover here, and I'll see if I can see which way we're putting the arrow. Yeah, it's going to sit here. Ah, right, okay. So yep, we do need to, unfortunately, have the speaker sitting like that so that the wire will go through that little indentation. That's a bit annoying, but hey ho. Okay, so that gets held down there, and it's secured in by 2.3 by 6mm screws. They're the ones we had loads of from last time. So again, screwing it in the 4 screw points. Now, it may interest you to know, but it may not, either or, that after, goodness, how long arguing, D'Agostini, formerly Model Space, have sent me out the remaining parts of the Millennium Falcon. Somehow they magically appeared when I said, you can either refund me for what I've already built, or you can send me out the remaining parts. They're probably about equal value. You might as well do one or the other. So rather than send me money back, they have sent me the last few parts to complete it. So that'll be fun. Although my screwdriver is magnetised, the magnet is stronger on this side of the speaker for some reason and is stealing my screw as I'm trying to put it in. There we go. So that's 3, and the last one going in here. 4. Okie dokie. So now we take this small glass piece and it fits into that alcove there. And again, just from that side. Now again, that's the button that you push to turn the thing on. But the next thing we're doing is getting this piece here, putting it face down across the button like that, so that if you look at this piece, it's shaped like this. So you don't want it round that way, you want it round this way with the posts facing up. Slip it over those 2 posts there, and it's being fitted by 2 of the 2.6 by 4mm screws, which you can see are very small. But so now if we're screwing this in, I'm assuming that's going to be reasonably tight. Yep, it is. Then I don't know how that's going to work as a switch. I dare say we'll find out. And I will say, following my last issue, I did plug the mains socket in to the other side of the base to test that the power light was lighting up, and it is. So power's at least getting to the LED. I'll shortly be able to test the rest of it, which is obviously very exciting. Okay, so the next thing it wants me to do is, I'll get one of my 2.3 by 6 mil screws ready. Yeah, next thing it wants me to do is get the leg, and again lining that indentation up with, looking underneath, I think it's, yeah, it's that hole there. You can see the one that doesn't have the indent for the screw head. So that goes in there. Then turning it upside down, screw it in from underneath. With the last of these screws. Now, as always, you do get a spare one, but I've used it. Because what I'm doing here is, instead of opening a pack, I'm using existing ones that were already open. So I have I have a couple of sealed bags of screws actually that weren't used for anything else. So strange. Okay, and then the last one going in to that hole that you can see just there. Okay, so as I said, there are a couple more wee modelly bits to be done, but I'm not going to do them as part of this video. I'm going to focus this video on finishing the stand off, and then when I lift the ship off to set the stand on it, or sit it on the stand, sorry, I will do the rest of the modelling parts, because some of them are obviously on one side of the ship and some are on the other, so it'll be easier to do it. Have it over on the bench to do one side, and then put it back on the stand and do the other side. If that makes sense to you. So that's that piece on. And now what we're doing is taking this piece here, which is a kind of push-on cap, and there should be an indent. There is a small extrusion there that has to line up with that indent just there. If you don't know how well you can see it, just there. That indent has to line up, and it should just clip in, and it does quite nicely. Now see, what some people have done is shortened these legs. I'll see how it looks where I'm displaying it. If it looks a bit naff, then yeah, I will take this all back off and trim this down to about half. But if it looks okay, I'll just leave it as is. Okay, so now turning it back over the other way. Well, I was going to say, why did we do that first? But we had to, because turning it back the other way, hope you can still see, we're going to be fitting the circuit board. So the circuit board is in here. Or one of the two circuit boards we get with this issue is in here. And it goes on next. If I can get the blister pack open. Bear with me 2 seconds, I'll go and get this packet out and I'll be back in just a sec. Okay, so over these 4 screw points here, with the biggest plug pointing towards the speaker, we're lining the PCB up so that all the screw holes are lined up, hopefully, which they are. And then again, it's the wee tiny screws we're using to secure this in. I was going to say I hope, because that's what it says in the instructions, but it went in very, very easily. So I was a bit nervous there, but no, seems to be holding it. So again, just one full of full screws on each corner. Because the last thing you want is for this circuit board to pop off and start flopping around, because then you risk damaging components and connectors and all sorts. But there we go, that's all secured. So the next thing we need is this piece of wire. and it's been plugged into this piece here, which I don't know if you can see, but it has a spring on it, and that is the switch. Also has 4 little tiny LEDs in there, which is what creates the backlighting effect. So this gets plugged in here. Again, line the pins up, make sure you're plugging it in the right way, and make sure you plug it in all the way too, and that's just perfect. And then what we're doing with that, 2.3 by 4mm again, so I'll get my little tiny screws onto my screwdriver, and where it's going is, you may have guessed, just over the top of the power button. So with it facing this way, the wire has to come out here. Now that's pretty much common sense because that's the way the screw holes line up, but you never know. Common sense isn't so common these days. So yeah, line up the screw holes, make sure the spring is in place, and then put the last 2, minus the spare one of course, of these tiny little screws. I can't remember using these screws up until this point. But yep, and there, the last one goes just in here. Again, making sure it's all centered. Now that is held in lovely, but if I'm pushing this, it doesn't make any sort of noise to indicate that I'm actually pushing anything. So I'm a bit confused as to how this power thing is going to work, but okay, it is what it is, I suppose. Interesting. Okay, so for the next stage, I need to actually bring the other side of the stand up that we worked on last time. So I'll get that and I'll be back in just a tick. Okay, so here we have the other side. So the power wire gets pushed through here, and then these 2 sides get pushed through like that. We're now turning the whole thing upside down again. This is going to be a test for me to try and show you what I'm doing. But again, you can see where the screws are going to go in, just there and there. So if I can try and put the first one in where you're able to see it, it just goes down through here and secures that leg there. Again, I've made sure these wires aren't pinched in any way. It is going to be slightly tighter with the insulation wrap on that cable that the other side doesn't have, or that the stock one didn't have, but there we go. And that is the 2 sides of the stands secure. So you can see it's going to look like that. Now even the stand struggles to fit on screen. You can see again there, and that's where the mains connector is. So it'll sit like this. So you'll have the power supply there, indicating that it's plugged in, and you'll have the power button there to show that it's been turned on or off. So yeah, that's how that's going to work. So now that's all been attached. The next thing I need is missing. Here we go. And this is the terminal that attaches onto, if you remember the power plate that's on the bottom of the ship. Well, this is the board that's going to connect from the base to the ship. And these are the connectors. So when I put this in, you can see that side of the board is going to be facing away from the other side of the stand. So again, just feed that down here, down into the underside. I'll need to go to the underside to fish it through. because we've already put the circuit board on the bottom. Again, if I'd noticed that before I started, because again, the person whose videos I had been watching deleted all their individual videos, and you now need to sit and watch through an hour worth of footage to find the bit you want, and I just don't have time for that. So yeah, pull that through, and then that just sits on there for just now. We're not pinning it down just yet. That comes at a later point, but just make sure it does fit in there like that. It will pop back out, but that's where it has to sit for now. So again, if I turn this back round, that's all the wires at the bottom. Speaking of the wires, that's what we're going to do now, is plug them all in. So the rainbow cable, the big one that we just pulled down from the top, is going in just here. Again, make sure everything goes in the right way. You don't want to be bending pins, because that's not going to be fun. This wire, the blue, red and black wire from the power switch, is going in just up here. So I'll move this one out the way first, because it's going into that socket there. Again, just making sure, plugging everything in the right way, because the last thing you want to do is bend or break a wire, because they're not very good at sending you replacements, and particularly if you bend or break that wire, because that's an aftermarket one, so I'm not getting an extra one of them. Right, okay. Yep, that's right. Again, I can't see into the socket on this side to figure out which way it's meant to go in. And that's the power switch, so you don't want it to be wrong. And then the speaker, which looks a little bit tight, is very tight actually, goes into this socket here, just about. Yep, it does in fact go in. So that's all the wires wired up for the bottom. And now what we need is the 2.3 by 6mm screws, or sorry, the 2.6 by 6mm screws, so they're slightly bigger. And we're just putting the bottom on the stand now. Now what I've found is that you're having to press it in quite firmly to get it to lock in certain places. So what I'll do is I'll start to put the screws into the bits that are fitting properly, like here, where it fits in perfectly. So I can fit my screw in there. But the bottom corner is a little bit finicky, where it doesn't want to go in. You can see there it's sticking up above the lip. But once you've put the rest of the screws in, it puts enough pressure on it to pull it down to where it should be. I had to do the same with the other side as well. There we go, that's it in now. Because you don't want to break either the bottom of it or the actual housing itself. So I'll put that screw in now. Okie dokie. Once I've put these screws in, I'll come back to you and show you what the stand looks like at that point. Okay, so that's what the stand looks like for now. Now I have borrowed a couple of parts from the next issue's packet. Now I'm not going to do the whole of the next issue because the latter part of it is fitting all the remaining details to the deck, and I don't really think we need to do that at this stage, because as I say, what I'm going to do is once I'm finished with the stand, when it comes to set it all up, when I lift the ship up, I'll bring it over and do the rest of those bits and pieces. So for now I'm going to leave it where it is, but I am, however, going to steal the bits from that issue required to finish the stand off. So moving this to one side again, we need this piece here, The first thing we're doing is stage 138 comes with 2 magnets, and they are going in here. And then I should have cut these off, but I haven't, so I will now. Cutting these pieces off of this sprue. These are basically just little caps that are going on to hold the magnets in place. And the way we're putting them in is there's a flat side and an indented side. The indented side has to face up. And there are 4 slots, you can see there, for the 4 tabs on the side to slot into. And it is just a push fit, and it is a fairly snug push fit, so they're not going to fall back out. Now, bringing the base itself back up. As you may be able to guess, this side goes here, and as you can see, that slot there will fit over the top of those bits. And now lining it up with the screw holes, putting in the only screws that come with issue 138. Issue 138. Scary. We are incredibly close to, we're within 2 stages have been done, and the last 2 stages, once 138 is done, are all to do with the control box itself. So yeah, so make sure these are tightened right down. You don't want your stand to wibble wobble. Perfect. And then going on to the other side, again, same as last time, just a small push fit connector. Again, line the extrusion up with the indent, and it clips into place. And then making sure it's facing the right way around, because obviously to fit the curvature of the hull, put that on there like that. And again, screw these 2 parts into place. And with this screw, that concludes the stand. And as I said, it also includes the power mod that comes from Partwork Upgrades. A very, very good upgrade. From everyone who's used it has said it's been very, very good. Makes a massive difference to the model. But that is your stands. The ship will sit there. That's the bit that connects to the bottom of the ship, and there's a magnet to hold the hull of your ship in place. It is also slightly cushioned so that when the hull sits on it, it doesn't just snap. But yeah, it's a nice stand. We will see how it looks with Bismarck on top of it just shortly, but as I say, there's a lot more kind of deck detail and stuff to do before we do anything like that. I'm not looking forward to some of it because it's in some pretty ridiculous places. Like, for example, there are ladders. I can actually show you. See, in there are ladders in there that go on the back of the hangars underneath where we put the bolts last time. So yeah, not looking forward to them. As you can see, here is the actual mains supply, and again, the only location I could pretty much get to fit is there. So that plugs into the side like this, and then that plugs into your main socket. So yeah, the stand completed in all its glory. So thank you again for watching, and we'll be back with the final bits and pieces really, and then the control board. So yeah, speak to you soon. As you can see there, it's plugged into the wall. That power indicator is on, and if you go along here, that is the power button. So if you give that a wee push, you can see the turrets start to rotate to calibrate themselves. There will be a wee bit of clicking, but that's just them calibrating, and then they'll slowly rotate back to their starting positions. Just like that. And that lets you know that the power is working absolutely perfectly. So yeah, all in all, a fantastic modification from Partwork Upgrades. I will include the link to the Partwork Upgrades site. And as you don't know if you can see, I've had to take my shelf down because Bismarck's now so high up. But yeah, definitely a worthwhile addition if you're going to be using the electric features, and I certainly plan to because they're fantastic. But yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I'll just turn it off. There you go. Thanks, guys. Yeah, so as you've seen, far better than using batteries. There's no variation in power because the main problem that people have found, particularly with Spitfire, not so much with Bismarck, was as the batteries started to drain, there was less and less energy. So particularly when the wheels on Spitfire were trying to go up, it was putting a lot of pressure on the mechanism, things were breaking, stuff like that. I don't know if the same was happening with the gears on the turrets for Bismarck. I didn't hear anything, but I just thought I don't want to keep changing batteries and having to lift that on and off to get into the batteries. Excuse me. So I thought, you know what? I got the opportunity to get my hands on the Partwork Upgrades power mod, so I thought, yeah, we'll go with that. But yeah, as always, sorry it was a longer one today, but a lot of modifications and a lot of changes had to be made to the stock one to get it to work. But yeah, that behind me is Bismarck, all complete and understand. So yeah, thank you for watching.